Aim High Live. This is a special one that we're just running because we just ran the Jane one. If you joined the last Aim High Live, then that was with Dr. Jane Goodall, who was amazing. And if you want to watch that back, then please do, and please share it out. It will be posted on the free online school aimhigh.co from when will it be posted? Maybe like 2 days. But yeah, do come and check it out. Thank you all so much for coming to this follow-up one. This one is about how can we protect our future. Let me just switch over to that. How can we protect our future? But first, what are these whales doing? What are these whales doing? Some of you will have seen this already, actually, but I am gonna go through like a few of my favorite bits from some of the recent Aim High Live science lessons. So Miz is saying hanging out, Izzy Rose is saying napping. Yeah, this is how whales. Well, let's see if anyone else has any ideas of what they're doing. 1 million slots is saying, are the whales breathing? Yes, in fact, that was one of the things I was going to talk about. While we wait to see what people think these whales are doing, there is something. Does anyone know what the Ondine curse is, or the Ondine curse? I don't know how to pronounce it. What is the Ondine curse? Has anyone ever heard of it? What is it? Yeah, do let me know what you think that might be. But I'll come back to what people are saying. So yeah, what are these whales doing? The answer is these whales are sleeping. So yeah, this is how whales sleep. I know that the title of this live is called "How Can We Protect Our Future," and it will be about that. But I'm gonna take you on a journey via whales first in order to get there. Salah's saying hi. Posey Joe is saying, are they dancing? And this does look like a kind of organised dance, doesn't it? Anyway, does anyone know? So yeah, these whales are sleeping, which is correct. Loads of people said that. Let me write it underneath. They are sleeping. Does anyone know how long do they sleep for? How long does a whale sleep for? How long does a whale sleep for when it goes to sleep? So Zanon is saying a long time. Izzy Rose is saying not long. What do you guys think? 15 hours. Zanon's saying they look like a cocoon. I'm keen to know what you guys think the time is. So, okay, Miz is saying as long as they feel as appropriate, and 1 million slots is saying 10 hours. So whales sleep for the shortest time of any mammal, I think, apart from maybe giraffes. They only sleep for 1 hour and 40 minutes each day. They only sleep for 1 hour and 40 minutes each day. And that's it. So yeah, whales. So all these whales are sleeping. They only sleep for 1 hour and 40 minutes each day. And the reason they can only sleep for 1 hour and 40 minutes is because they've all got something called the Ondine curse. Does anyone know what this curse is? So for people joining late, thanks so much for coming. This is an Aim High Live. This is following on from the one we just did where we had the amazing guest, Dr. Jane Goodall. If you missed that, then you can watch it back later. This one is a follow-on from that about how can we protect our future. And it's going to be about a few cool things about the environment, starting off with whales. This is a science lesson, and so you can ask questions whenever you want, and we'll see which way it goes. Okay, do they? So Haydox is saying, do they sleep one time a day, or is it split up in increments? I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know the answer to is that ants sleep for like a split second at a time. So if you take a little ant, You've never seen an ant sleeping, right? And it's thought that they do their sleeping by kind of stopping every now and then, but only for a split second and then carrying on. So ants, I think, sleep in tiny increments. But as for whales, I don't actually know. But yeah, whales only sleep for about an hour and 40 minutes, and it's because they have the Ondine Curse. No one has been able to guess what the Ondine Curse is yet. 1 million sloths is saying, would they be more civilized if they had more time to sleep? I don't know. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys what the Ondine Curse is. The Ondine Curse is a curse that comes in. I think it comes from Greek mythology, but it's this idea that you always have to think about breathing. So you always have to think to breathe. Because at the moment we can stop thinking about breathing and it's absolutely fine. But the curse means that you always have to think in order to breathe, which means that you can't go to sleep. Now, all whales have the Ondine Curse, so they have to think in order to breathe. So how is it that whales manage to go to sleep if they always have to think to breathe? What do you guys think? And NZ Catherine is saying, hey, I'm sorry I'm late. It must be so late over in New Zealand. Lillian is saying that she thinks that whales maybe shut off half of their brain like dolphins. I actually don't know about that either. So Diablo is saying, yeah, they just don't breathe for an hour and 40 minutes. So whales will avoid breathing for 1 hour and 40 minutes while they go to sleep, which is fine because obviously they can hold their breaths for hugely long periods of time. Okay, right. Now, why am I talking about whales when we're supposed to be talking about how can we protect our future? And it's because their sleep leads into what we're going to do below. So we're going to talk about sleep, but we're also going to talk about something else. So I don't know how many of you watched Henry's live when he was doing a science lesson a few weeks ago, but he did one about the stuff inside a whale's body, and it takes up about, I think it's something crazy like two-thirds of their head or something is taken up by this substance called spermaceti, because these are sperm whales. So spermaceti fills up their heads. What do you guys think spermaceti is used for? What have humans been using spermaceti for over the last few hundreds of years? And Catherine got up for the Jane Goodall live and is now on for this extra one. That is amazing commitment, yeah. Okay, so 1 million slots is saying it sounds like pasta. And Blue Omicron is saying perfume, but maybe that's perfume. And Haydox is saying wax, right? Okay, so spermaceti was the first substance that humans discovered that burnt with a completely clear flame. So you could use spermaceti from the head of a whale, and you could burn it with completely clear flame, which meant that, and it was also an amazing lubricant. Now, as you can imagine, this resulted in many, many decades of incredible cruelty to whales because people were hunting them down so that they could get hold of this spermaceti. There are rumours that, and these are not necessarily true, so I don't want to say that these definitely are true, but there are rumours that NASA was still using spermaceti all the way into the 60s. Now, what do you think stopped humans from using spermaceti? Why did humans stop using spermaceti from the head of a whale? What saved whales? What was the thing that meant that humans no longer had to use spermaceti to create this clear flame or to use it as a lubricant? What was the great saviour of the whales? What do you guys think? And it is incredible cruelty to animals. Yeah, you're completely right. For those who are joining late, by the way, this is an Aim High Live, so you can ask questions whenever you want. This is the free live interactive online school. We are doing lessons about like geography, English, science, politics, all kind of things, but we're doing it in a way that's interesting and like takes a new view on it. So do sign up if you want to see more of these kinds of things. You can sign up for the weekly schedule at the website down here, and also please follow our socials, which I think people are posting about in the chat as well on Aim High Live, if you want to get more updates. And do tell your friends about what we're doing. We've got a really nice growing community of people who are coming to the school, but the more people, the more fun it is. Like today there are like 4,000 people in the chat at the moment, which is fun. Anyway, so someone on the team has just posted in the chat that there's a product. I just want to draw everyone's attention to this. There's a product used in perfume that comes from sperm whales. It's called ambergris, and it's something that they vomit out, and it's like this hard substance that washes up on beaches. And it used to be, and maybe still is actually, like an incredibly valuable thing if you come across this big block of ambergris on a beach that's been vomited out by a sperm whale. But that's something that they naturally produce without dying, so it's not necessarily a cruel thing for people to collect. It's like a byproduct for them, as far as I know. Anyway, right, the thing that saved whales, the thing that saved all of these sleeping sperm whales from being hunted down for their spermaceti that burns with a nice clear flame is, as lots of people have said, so Hootie said this, Dogs Are Cool, great username, has said this as well, and yeah, they were saved by the oil and gas industry. So whales were saved by the oil and gas industry because as soon as it started up, or once it got going, there was a much easier way to access lubricants and clear burning oils. So much as a lot of this live is going to be about how bad the oil and gas industry is, I just wanted to start with one good thing that has happened since the oil and gas industry began. And it's funny how a lot of things, you have to think, if you're in charge of a big oil and gas company, I'm just going to switch to the screen. If you're in charge of a big oil and gas company, then you will have a story that you tell yourself that justifies what you do, and you will tell yourself things that are good about what you do. You'll say, I'm helping people to get access to power, I'm helping people to have jobs, I'm helping people to be able to live their lives, and I'm even saving sperm whales because now we don't hunt them for spermaceti anymore. People tell themselves these stories to try and make it okay what they do. And a lot of campaigning, if you want to protect the future and you want to make the world better, is about helping people to reshape their own stories so that they can understand for themselves that we actually really need to close down like all the fossil fuels, otherwise we're in massive amounts of trouble. Anyway, right, let's carry on. So I planned this like brief interlude for myself, which was, I don't know who was watching the Jane Goodall live that just happened, but she made loads of chimpanzee noises, and I was going to copy one of them and see if anyone could guess which one I'm doing. So I'm gonna try and replicate one now, just as a really brief aside, and anyone can guess which sound you think I am making. So this is Dr. Goodall's sounds. Okay, so the sound that I'm going to make is this. Ooh, 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 ooh. Which sound do you reckon that is that a chimpanzee made? And I'm sure that she would have said that that's not a very good job. But it's amazing how if you ever are near chimpanzees, if you were to make that noise, then they would understand the kind of thing that you're saying. Okay, so Childish Gambito is saying distance call. Izzy Rose is saying good night. Catherine said good night. Ilian is saying good food. Miz is saying that's very rude of me. Is that because you completely understand chimpanzee and I just said something really rude? Maybe. Anyway, no, that was supposed to be good night, which Jane just described on the live we just did with her. You could hear across the valley if you had two different communities of chimpanzees, then they would do that call across the valley when they were saying goodnight to one another, which is pretty amazing. Anyway, right, so how do we bring together the oil and gas industry and sleep? So I wanted to show you guys this chart next to this beaver that is asleep. So I'm just going to label this sleeping beaver. Beavers are so cool. My lesson yesterday was about beavers and how brilliant they are, or maybe it was the day before. Anyway, brilliant. Beavers are so great. You need to learn more about them, would be my advice. Anyway, so who has seen this chart before? This is the chart for the last 800,000 years of the CO2 level. So that's the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And as you can see, it's kind of wiggled, blah, 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 blah. This is the concentration of CO2 in our atmosphere for the last 800,000 years. As you can see, it's not completely stable. It goes up, goes down, it goes up and goes down. So one of the things that I found really amazing when I saw this is the following. If you draw a line like this, maybe I need to draw a bit of a thicker line. I'm going to make that a bit thicker. Okay, if I draw a line across like this, what do you guys reckon is going on when the graph is above that line? So if we're talking like 400,000 years ago, we're very clearly above. What's the world like? And what's the world like below the line? What do you guys think? What is the world like above the line, and what is the world like below the line? Someone's demanding a top hat on this beaver, and I dare say this beaver is very deserving of a top hat, having because it's going on a holiday, and it needs to dress well. So 1 million sloth is saying, is it the difference between good and bad? And it's not the difference between good and bad. This is a very natural cycle that's happened over the last 800,000 years. So Eric has come in with exactly the right answer, which is Ice Age below. Eric is also saying big bugs above. Yes, so that is often the case. Although, yeah, oftentimes in history, if you go back far enough, there were times when there was so much oxygen in the air that you had dragonflies as big as horses that breathed. I like to say that they breathed through their armpits, but actually it wasn't through their armpits. It was kind of like an area near their armpits that they breathed through. But anyway, dragonflies as big as horses, that all you need is an atmosphere full of oxygen, and boom, you get those big dragonflies. Anyway, so let's go back to this chart. So this is, as I was saying, the CO2 concentration over the last 800,000 years. And there have been loads of people on the chat who have correctly identified what's going on. So below this blue line is Ice Age. And above this blue line is what's called an interglacial, or let's just call it not an Ice Age. So one of the things that absolutely shocked me when I first saw this is that, I wonder if anyone has the same reaction to it as well. Have you noticed how most of the past 800,000 years has been Ice Age? Because when I first saw that, I was like, what? That's so weird. It was so weird to me. So yeah, most of the last 800,000 years has been an Ice Age. I don't know if that's as surprising to anyone else as it is to me. Childish Gambito, I've just seen your question. Ask it again at the end, because we are heading in that direction. Don't you worry. Okay, so I'm gonna carry on with this. So yeah, below is an Ice Age, above is not an Ice Age. Now, I think many of you will have seen this before, but if this is the oscillation of CO2 up and down for the last 800,000 years, this is what's happened in the last couple of hundred years. So in barely the time it takes an oak tree to grow, we have massively increased the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere at this unbelievable meteoric rate. And one of the things that you'll often hear people who are kind of saying, oh, it's not a big problem, say, is they'll say, well, if you look back in the past, then there are times when we had 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide up here. And they're completely right. There are loads of times in the past when carbon dioxide has been this high, but they're missing a point, because in fact, let's see if you guys know. I'm interested to see if you guys know, what is the problem going on here? Because the problem is not that we're at 400 ppm of CO2. What is the actual problem? Shervop999 is saying, this should be our online school. Thanks. This is your online school. This is the free live interactive online school. And Master Divish is saying, aren't we at like 500 ppm now? No, we're about 414, I think, or something. The level of CO2 goes kind of up towards April, and it peaks around April, May, and then it drops a little bit towards December, and then it goes back up again. And the overall trend is that it goes up and up, but there's always this like oscillation each year, which you can't see on this graph because this graph is too zoomed out. But you will see that the highest ever CO2 reading will have just happened, and we'll be heading back down into a kind of December low, but then next year we'll get the highest ever again. Well, I say highest ever, I don't mean highest ever, because obviously there were times when it was higher. I mean highest in the last million years or so. Okay, right, so a lot of people saying the Industrial Revolution was devastating for animals, and Mears is saying the speediness. Yes, so, and Ilian is saying the same thing as well. The problem with CO2 is all about the speed that it's risen. The level of CO2 has risen so quickly, and that is the problem. So if you're ever chatting to someone who is denying that climate change is a problem because they're saying, "Oh, CO2 used to be really high in the past," then what you need to say to them is like, "Yeah, you're completely right. CO2 did used to be just as high in the past, but actually that's not the problem. The problem is the speed." It's all about the speed at which the CO2 is increasing, because that means that the world is changing far too quickly for a large number of living things to keep up with. And the more quickly it changes, the more quickly it will continue to change. Right, I'm going to come back to that in a mo. But first, before we carry on down that line, I wanted to talk to you about sleep. I'm bouncing around a little bit here because this is kind of like an intro lesson to lots of other lessons that are going to happen. So I'm going to go back to sleep. So if you want to find out more about any of these lessons, then sign up to Aim High, because all of these lead into different lessons, and I'm doing like an introduction to each of them. By the way, as well, if you are joining late, this is the free live interactive online school. This is a science lesson following on from the live that we just had with Dr. Jane Goodall as a guest, and you are very welcome to ask questions whenever you want and respond to my questions as well. We have just been talking about the level of CO2. Before that, we were talking about whales being how long they sleep for. They only sleep for 1 hour and 40 minutes each day, and they have to think to breathe, which seems like it's annoying, but they're fine with it. Anyway, so now we're going to talk about sleep. I'm just going to talk about this sleeping beaver. So another thing that I think is quite interesting about this graph about CO2 is how much it relates to sleep. So I don't know how much you guys know about the history of sleep, but can everyone say on the chat, I'm interested to know what you think, do you think that first things were asleep or first things were awake? Because obviously as humans, we can be awake and asleep. But if we go back in time, then what were things first? Were things first awake or were things first asleep? Okay, so Delastros is saying awake. Lots of people are saying asleep. Is he saying that? Shervop is saying asleep. And his BD is saying sleep started with the development of bigger brains, maybe. Great point. And Krenglish is saying, would cellular activity count as awake? And that is a great question. Okay, so generally we don't count cellular activity necessarily as being awake, although that's kind of the way we define it, so you could argue against that. Anyway, the reason I wanted to ask you about this is because it's thought, if we go back, that long ago everything was asleep, and then eventually something woke up. And by woke up, what we mean is that some nerve cells managed to, or some cells that have now become nerve cells, managed to take control of a load of other cells and coordinate how they were behaving. And this idea of awakeness is to do with some cells kind of coordinating other cells in a way that has like a very top-down, like we're in charge and you other cells are subordinate, you're going to listen to what we say, kind of vibe to it. But the reason why this is such an important idea to touch upon is that sleep is the norm. Like, sleep is the norm for stuff that is alive. I want you to think about how long you could stay alive if you were awake. So what's the longest time that anyone has stayed alive awake? Does anyone know? People were saying it's gone a bit laggy. So the lagginess has disappeared my end as well. But see, there was like a moment of lag. So just to catch you up on things in case anyone missed it, I was saying about how sleep is the norm for living things. And that's something that we often overlook, is that actually it's really normal for things to be asleep, and being awake is quite unusual. What is the longest that you can stay alive whilst you are also awake? So we've got Mark Brown is saying 10 days. Crimo is saying, what about sharks? Great question. Completely irrelevant. Love it though. Hungry Pineapple Lord is saying 13 days. And GB Record TV is saying 30 to 40 days. Top Asia is saying 3. weeks. Okay, so there are loads of different numbers coming in, and actually they're all kind of around correct. And I don't know. I asked this question. I don't actually know the exact number, but last time I checked, it was about 10 to 14 days or something like that. Was the longest time that someone had been awake before they went completely mad. Now, in contrast, what's the longest time that you can stay asleep? Provided that you're being fed by a drip. So if you've got a drip feeding into your bloodstream, what is the longest that you can stay? Eric is saying it was 11. Oh, great. Thanks, Eric. So I knew it was 10 to 14-ish. So yeah, it was 11 days was the longest that someone remained awake. So how long can you remain asleep for, provided you're being fed by a drip and you're having your waste products removed as well? So an ant pineapple is spot on, saying forever. And tacticality is saying 100 years. You can spend your entire life asleep. You could literally be asleep for your entire life in a coma as long as you're being fed, and it's fine, because being asleep is actually a normal part of being alive. It's like being asleep is a very natural thing, whereas being awake, well, sorry, not unnatural, but being asleep is the normal state of life, and then being awake is actually just a bonus level that we get having been asleep, which is why it's extremely important to sleep and to get enough sleep, because otherwise you just can begin to deteriorate because you're kind of trying to access that bonus level too often. And the reason why I kind of related it to this graph is that even though I always thought that it not being an ice age was the norm, and then I found out that ice ages are actually the norm, and most of the last 800,000 years has been ice age. And it was a similar revelation for me, being like, oh wow, like we've actually been asleep for most of time, and sleep is the norm, and we really need to all get more sleep. I wonder who here feels like they don't get enough sleep and needs to improve upon it. And I would definitely Ilian MTG is saying I don't sleep, so maybe Ilian's got a new record beyond the 11 days that's currently been set of not sleeping. Anyway, you gotta sleep. Right, okay, so let's go back to CO2. And by the way, do ask questions whenever you want. I know that someone asked one about farming, and I'm going to get to that as well in terms of how can we protect the future. But let's talk more about what's going on at the moment. So we've got this hugely, rapidly rising CO2, and it's starting to affect things quite weirdly. Now, here is a picture of a baby that's actually kind of irrelevant, but it's because I've got a cool fact to tell you in a moment. But right, here is the Earth, and what is CO2 doing to the Earth? So as a layer of CO2 accumulates around the Earth, what is it doing to the Earth? What is happening as all the CO2 accumulates around the world? Okay, so Dark Tycoon is saying greenhouse effect, and Paz Bazaz, great username as well, is saying heats it up. Yeah, exactly. So as the CO2 accumulates around the world, it heats the world up. It's kind of weird. I remember thinking it was weird, like, why does it not, because it's the sun's rays, right? Why is it that it allows the sun's rays to pass through, but then not out? That always really confused me, because I thought it's a layer of CO2, right? But something that was never taught to me at school, and I found out about it later, is that the heat that's coming in from the sun is a slightly different wavelength. And so it comes in just straight through the atmosphere, heats up the Earth, and then when it tries to bounce off the Earth, it is a slightly different colour. And this slightly different colour does keep bouncing back and heating up the atmosphere. However, the other thing that's quite important is that we need some CO2. We need a little bit of greenhouse gas. Otherwise, the whole world would be at like an average of minus 20 degrees Celsius or something like that. Anyway, basically like well below freezing for most of the world. So we need a bit of greenhouse effect. Anyway, right, let's get on to the important stuff. So as the greenhouse effect warms up the planet, which parts of the planet are warming fastest? Which bits of the planet are warming fastest? So where warms fastest? Where warms fastest? And for those who are just joining now, which you can see some people are just joining now, thanks so much for coming. This is an Aim High Live on the free online school, so you can ask questions whenever you want. This one's about science, and this one is about how can we protect our future. So it's about bits of environmentalism, bit of whales, bit of sleeping beavers, a little bit about this baby that I'm about to tell you about. Yeah, if you want to find out more about the school, you want to sign up for get the weekly schedule, then sign up here. It's seems to be rapidly the number of followers seems to be rapidly increasing. So even though I guess people would normally associate the word school with something they don't want to do, I think that this seems to be something that people like. So roll up. Anyway, so people are saying equator is warming up fastest. I'm seeing that from Asia. And Kanik is saying deserts are warming up fastest. Jari Madhu is saying maybe it's dry land that's warming up fastest. But actually, it's 1 million sloths is the one who's got the closest answer that I can see at the moment, which is Antarctica. So actually, something that's quite strange is that the parts of the planet that are warming up fastest are the poles. So the poles are warming up faster than the equator. So the temperature's going up everywhere because of the greenhouse effect, but it's the poles that are heating up faster. So the poles are heating up much faster than the rest of the world. Now, this results in something quite strange happening to the world, and it's to do with why the weather is changing. Has anyone... Okay, question to you all. Who has felt that the weather is changing in ways that are somehow speedier and more freakish than it was before? Who's felt that the weather seems to be different, that it's like flipping around all over the place? So GB Record is saying yes, 100%. Zanon saying yes. So someone's got hail right now. So quite a few people are saying yes. I've asked this question before and a few people have said no, and that's the thing. I think if you're younger as well, you might not have noticed that the weather's changing so much because you haven't had as much context to look back on. But for myself, I've really noticed that the weather has been changing quite differently to how it used to. Now, I'm going to explain to you why this is, because it's quite simple and the explanation is quite cool. So let's draw out the equator as like this kind of blue zone. It's kind of the wrong way around actually, because the equator's hot and the poles are cold. But anyway, we'll just do it like that. So the equator is getting hotter as well, and the poles are getting hotter, but the poles are getting hotter faster. So let's say that the poles used to be at like minus, I don't know the numbers, so I'm just going to fill in some numbers. Let's say the poles used to be at minus 20 and now they're going up to like minus 10. So like an area of the pole, a reading that would normally be minus 20, we've found that it's going up to minus 10. Meanwhile, on the equator, a reading that used to be like 32, we've found has gone up to like 35 or something. So you can see how they're both going up, but the poles are heating up faster. So the poles have heated up by 10 degrees and the equator's only heated up by 3 degrees. These aren't the exact numbers, I'm just doing them as examples. So what does this mean for the difference? So how has the difference between the temperatures changed? So here the difference in temperatures is 52. And here the difference in temperatures is 45. So what's happened? This is really important. Like, what has happened with the difference in temperatures between the poles and the equator? What do you guys think? Okay, so there are loads of comments coming in. I'm trying to catch up on them. So Drew Drawn, great username as well. Why do the poles warm faster? And this is to do with it's to do with the orientation of the Earth, and it's to do with the way that currents of warming air and things circulate around the planet. And it's actually something I don't know a huge amount about. All I know is that the poles are definitely warming faster, and this has been shown over and over again now with people just measuring basic temperatures. And someone is saying, Posy Joe is saying that the Earth needs a top hat, which is I agree completely. So let's pop that on. Okay, so the difference in temperature is falling, and this is really important because it means that the winds are slowing down. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about the wind, but the wind all around the Earth is to do with the tension between the hot equator and the cold poles. And the more tense that difference is, so if you have a really hot equator and really cold poles, then you get a lot of temperature tension between them and the winds go really, really quickly around the world. Whereas if that difference gets smaller, so if the equator gets a bit hotter but not that much hotter, and the poles get much, much hotter, then the difference falls, and so the tension reduces, and so all of the winds all around the world start to slow down. So here is, I wanted to show you, there is kind of a wind stream that we call that flows from North America across to the UK, and this is the one that I'm going to use to demonstrate. Now, this wind stream is very much slowing down. Now, what do you think will happen to this wind stream as it slows down? How will it behave differently? What do you guys reckon? So the winds are slowing down as they circle around the Earth, and how is that going to change things? What do you think? And while people are answering that question of what will happen to the winds between North America and the UK, as is happening to the winds all around the world, I'll just quickly tell you what this baby's about. I learned this amazing fact that I said on a live the other day, which is that babies, when they're trying to learn to speak, they babble, and so they make blah, 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 like random noises until they eventually come upon something that their parents are like, whoa, that's proper speaking, and then they get a reaction, and then they learn, and they're like, oh yeah, this seems like a really good noise to make, and they try and make it again. And by experimenting with sounds, that's how they learn to speak. Did you guys know that well, in fact, I'll ask you what you think. The babies of parents who are hard of hearing or deaf will babble with their hands. They'll babble with their hands by experimenting with hand shapes to try and make sign language. Do you think they learn this faster or slower than babies who are babbling with their voices? What do you guys think? So lots of people are saying they'll learn faster, way faster and about the same. Not that bright is actually spot on. They'll learn the same. They'll learn about the same speed. So it's all to do with the baby's cognitive ability to understand language. So as a baby is developing, if the language center of their brain is stimulated by trying to communicate with other living things, then they'll learn at the same speed. It's just the same speed. Doesn't matter how they're communicating. We've invented speaking language as the main way we communicate, but you can equally teach a baby to communicate another way of communicating at the same speed. You could probably teach them to communicate entirely in dance. Anyway, so let's go back to the arrow. What is going to happen to the wind as it slows down? And I saw quite a few people say, so someone's saying, Shadson is saying the Mexican Gulf streams are very unlikely to stop. So I'm not saying that would be the water underneath, because the Gulf Stream refers to the water underneath. But I'm not saying that the wind is going to stop. I'm just saying it's going to slow down. And in order to Master Davicius is saying, can we please invent a dance language? Yeah, go for it. I would love it if you did that, especially if it came from Aim High Live. That'd be brilliant. So in order to answer this, what happens as the winds slow down, you need to think about rivers. Think about what a river does when it's going really fast down a hill. What shape does it take? And think about a river when it's going quite slowly along a plain. What shape does a river look like on a map when it's going fast down a hill and when it's going along a plain slowly? Because as the winds slow down, they will change something. They will change their shape just in the same way that rivers do when they slow down. So let me know what you think. And Dark Tycon has come in with meandering, which is great, and for megalblast blah 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 slow equals spreads. Yeah, exactly, spawn. And fast means it concentrates more. Mears is saying it becomes a wiggly boy. Exactly. So when it's really straight, it's a fast-flowing river. It's like a fast-flowing river, and it will just go. Sorry, when it's really fast, it will flow really straight. And as it slows down, because of the reducing tension between hot and cold, it will start to wiggle. Now, I'm just going to flip across to over here where I've got a picture of the River Dane, which is near where I grew up, going really slowly as it flows across the plain. And I've used that to represent a kind of exaggerated version of what the winds are doing now. So as the winds start to slow down, they start to go in this big wiggly shape instead. Now, what do you think the consequence would be if one day the wind is kind of wobbling above us like this? And when I say us, I'm referring to the UK because that's where I am now, but you can imagine this is happening all over the world, so you can imagine this basically occurring wherever you are. So Ilian is saying, is it heat waves? And Megalblaz is saying they gather more heat. And King Prongs has got a good analogy as well on how it slows down and spreads a little bit as well. Netoye is saying it creates new vortexes. And Posjo is saying hurricane tortilla. Jared is saying to hot and cold air mix more. And Venable Sugar is saying, does it produce new storms? Okay, so these are some great ideas coming in. So what happens as the river starts to wiggle is that if we are below the river of air, so this is the wind having slowed down, then we will suck up hot air. So we'll get hot air from the Sahara Desert and we'll have a freakishly warm period of time. Now, this live actually is about to finish, but for those who are joining late, thanks so much for coming. This is the free live interactive online school, and I am doing a science lesson about how can we protect the future. And actually, I haven't really got onto that topic in time. But anyway, I'm just going to continue going on with wind because it's interesting. Although do let me know if you are annoyed for me having not got onto the topic of the title yet, even though we're so far in, and I will try and get to those things quicker next time. But we've been taken on so many interesting tangents by people asking questions, so I've just gone with it. Anyway, as the river flows in this direction, we will get hot air sucked up from underneath. So as the winds on the earth slow down, which is happening with climate change, they start to wobble, and one day we might be below the stream, really, really hot. Another day we might be above the stream. And so if we are here, then you'll get loads of cold Arctic air sucked down. And so from one day to the next, you could go from brilliant sunshine and blazing heat through to a hailstorm and freezing cold, and the weather is going to start to become a lot less consistent. The weather is going to start to change very rapidly all around the world for a lot of people, where people have been used to having consistent weather that has allowed them to, grow crops, to make plans, to kind of live a normal life. And what we're going to find as climate change accelerates, if we allow it to keep accelerating, is that our winds are going to continue to slow down, and we are going to get even more flip-flopping between weathers that we're used to. We'll instead of having like a continuous spring will contain winter and summer. And if you're in a region of the world where you don't have spring, summer, winter, and autumn, then it will start to make a mess of when the rainy season comes and when the dry season comes. And so you might end up with ridiculously long dry seasons and really short rainy seasons, which can be very, very damaging. So these are all really big problems. Right, I realised that we're heading towards the end, so we should start to wrap up. Corks is saying, does anyone know what caused the Ice Age? And the answer to that is no. Nobody knows what triggers an Ice Age. But certainly if you look at the graph that we were looking at before, where we were showing the last 800,000 years of CO2 and showing that below is Ice Age and above is not, it looks like we're pretty unlikely to head into an Ice Age soon, since the CO2 levels are absolutely shooting up. Anyway, right, I'm just going to kind of flick across to some key things that need to change about the world if we are going to protect our future. And these are things that I'll continue to talk about in other Aim High lives that are coming up. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, then do head to the website aimhigh.co to sign up for the schedule. And also please do follow us on socials. You can follow us on Aim High Live across all the platforms. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We need to set up TikTok. We haven't done that yet. But yeah, those are the channels to follow us on. Do check that out to sign up. And if you please do share Aim High as well with your friends and family, and do also write to us to suggest topics, because we'd love to do the topics that our students want to see. And if you're watching on Twitch, then do follow the Twitch stream. So there's a function where you can actually follow our Twitch stream if you want to be notified when we go live with our lessons. So head over to our Twitch homepage, which is again Aim High Live, and hit the follow button as well. And also, well, I'll say that one at the end because that's important. But right, so key things that we need to do in order to protect our future are... Oh, someone else is calling me off. Key things that we need to do to protect our future, and these are things that we'll talk about in lives to come. One, we need to massively reduce the use of fossil fuels that are being produced. How... We're starting to run over, but this is a really important question that I want to ask people. Fossil fuels. How much do you think the amount of fossil fuel, the amount of oil under the ground, ready to be mined out, how much do you think that changes every year? So every year we're obviously removing oil from the ground, but we're also discovering new oil. So the amount of oil that we think is under the ground, how much do you think it's changing by each year? And Ilian's saying, do you have a YouTube account? And we do. It's again at Aim High Live if you want to go to the YouTube account. That shows all the past lives, but you can watch them all via the website as well, which is just there. So there are some. So people are saying 20%, 10%. So what's interesting is some people are saying plus, and that's it. The amount of fossil fuel, the amount of oil that we have left underground is predicted to go up by 2%. Or has gone up by 2% every single year for the past several years, because we're discovering it far faster than we're using it. We will never ever run out of fossil fuels fast enough to save ourselves. Other things we need to do to protect the planet are dealing with plastic pollution. I have done huge amounts of stuff on that before in other lives, and I'm going to talk about that again on other lives that are going to come up on Aim High. Talk to you about what you can do to try and reduce plastic pollution, how we can fight this fight. Another thing that's really crucial is to do with this shampooed cow. It's to do with what we eat, where it comes from, and how much those things impact the world. Did you guys know if you put all of the world's land mammals, all of them, so giraffes, elephants, tigers, squirrels, dogs, all of that, if you put them all into a pile, all the world's land mammals, what percentage of that pile do you think would be wild animals? What percent would be humans, and what percent would be cows? What do you think? I'm going to wait to see what things come in there. What percentage of all the world's land mammals would be wild, humans, and cows? Canik is straight in with a spot-on answer for wild animals. That would take up about 3% of the pile. Humans, I'm seeing some 10%, but actually humans would be about 28%. Cows would be... Oh, Vesperin is so spot on with cows, or almost spot on. It's about 42% would be cows. Cows take up such a ridiculous proportion of the world's land. It is insane. They are the fastest driver of deforestation and one of the biggest drivers of CO2 emissions. It's kind of unbelievable, actually. I didn't want to believe it when I found out about it, but if you look at your own, the average individual in the world, the average global citizen, the biggest impact they have in terms of greenhouse gas emissions is by eating beef. In fact, if you just drop beef, that's the single most effective thing that any individual can do to reduce their own carbon footprint, and that's the average. That's for the average global citizen. So if you fly a lot, then flying is worse. But for the average global citizen, if you drop beef from your diet, that's actually the biggest thing. Anyway, I'm going to talk about that again in another live. I'm also going to talk about anisomycin. This is the thing called the immortal jellyfish. It's a jellyfish that lives forever. I'll explain to you how that works. I'll explain to you how you can use this chemical to forget everything and start again. And I will even tell you how spiders fly thousands of miles across the ocean and manage to control their height as they do so, as if they're like a sci-fi incredible alien creature. I'll tell you about all this on future Aim High Lives. Do sign up for What's Coming in the Future. And if you have enjoyed this, please tell your friends, please spread the word, please share it out. Follow at Aim High Live, that's our social handle for everything, and do sign up for our mailing list there. And something really helpful would be, I'm putting the links in the chat. Something really helpful would be if you wanted to fill out a survey, because we're basically doing this all as something to try and create a better world for people. And if you can help us to make it even better, that'd be great. And you can do that by, there we go. The link just went into the chat, the feedback forms link. Do that, and it would be amazing if you filled it in for us. Thank you all. You can also, I keep forgetting to say this, but you can also donate to Aim High because we're setting up a charity. So if you scroll to the bottom of our webpage, then there's a donate link. So do share that out with anyone who might want to donate to the school, because that will really help us with running it and making the tech better, and it will all go towards the charity, which will all go towards making more of these. So I think that's everything. Suggest topics if you want as well, and I'm going to say goodbye now, and thanks all for coming. Do hit follow and subscribe and continue to support the school and spread the word. Thank you, everyone. Farewell. Goodbye. Oh wait, maybe I'll say that's goodbye, but are there any last questions that I should look at? So Enzo Catherine is saying, is that the one where the jellyfish becomes a child when life gets too hard? Yeah, that's exactly it. This immortal jellyfish basically is just like, life's too hard, and just becomes a polyp, like a little child, and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Anyway, I'll explain to you how that happens one day. Someone's saying spoiler wind, and if you're referring to cows, actually most of the methane produced by cows comes from their burps. And that's not even the biggest reason why they are responsible for kind of increasing emissions. It's mainly to do with the fact they take up so much land. If you've ever seen a cow like in a field, it needs a huge amount of space to get enough grass to eat, and often that's a field that could be a forest or something else. But also loads, especially in the United States of America, loads of cows are fed on huge amounts of corn, and that corn takes and other similar crops that would normally be going to humans, but those crops require huge amounts of land to grow as well. Plus, even if you're eating grass-fed beef, normally that's grown across these huge areas of land that are pulling loads of water out of the ground, that again could be systems that are much more biodiverse and capturing a lot more carbon. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. I actually love cows. I'm a really big fan of cows. But we need to reduce our intake of beef as a planet hugely, otherwise we're in big trouble. It's one of the big problems, unfortunately. And I love farmers, and so it's a really difficult thing, and I really want to do it in a way that supports farmers. But anyway, it's a difficult thing to do, but we need to work out a way to reshape the future in this way. Catherine's saying, why don't we just eat grass? And we can't, which is a shame. Anyway, farewell all. I will see you all future Aim High Live. In fact, yeah, this is what's coming up tomorrow. I forgot to say. So Cal Major is going to be our inspiring guest at 3 p.m. UK time tomorrow. So that's going to be like 10 a.m. East Coast, United States. And I guess 8 a.m. on Los Angeles on the other side, if you're up that early. And yeah, Cal Major paddleboarded the entire length of the United Kingdom, from the bottom to the top, from Land's End to John O'Groats, campaigning about plastic pollution, and she is amazing. She's coming on tomorrow. Also tomorrow morning, we've got Will Brexit End the EU, and I'm doing Is Mine Green, Your Green? So I'm going to talk about perception of colour. And then this is what is coming up next week. So do come along for some of those as well. You'll see that we've also got like school ones, like high school biology. But anyway, check out the website. You'll find all this. I'm going to go now. Farewell all. Have a nice day.